As we continue to, or rather as we mark the end of Women's Month, the Young Leaders Connect, an initiative of the International Women's Forum of South Africa, will host a leadership summit as well as awards under the theme Advancing Gender Equity and Equality, and will bring in influential thought leaders, speakers and experts to discuss the gap in gender parity. We are now joined to tell us more about the initiative and the summit by Co-chairperson Lerato Phelane. Lerato, thank you very much for your time this morning. So as the co-chairperson of Young Leaders Connect, maybe let's start with an introduction to our viewers about your organization.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So as you've said in your intro, Young Leaders Connect is a program of the International Women's Forum, South Africa. So IWF is actually a global program of preeminent women leaders across 70 countries in the globe, with over 70,000 members of women who are leaders in various spheres of the economy as well as entrepreneurs, right? And so then we've got the South African chapter that exists in our context. So when the women of IWFSA were teasing out to say, how do we pay it forward? How do we empower the next generation of leaders? Then YLC was birthed. So YLC is truly anchored on the premise of mentorship, because through Young Leaders Connect, we take on a cohort of emerging and aspiring leaders, and also those young women who are already in leadership, and then they get paired with mentors, which are women in IWFSA, who really impart their knowledge and wisdom through their lived and shared experiences. And what that does then for the young leaders is really to empower them and equip them so that they don't actually repeat some of the mistakes. You know, as that old adage says, that that is really what we do at YLC. We recognize as well that, you know, mentorship, due to the rising demand of mentorship, it's not usually possible for us to do the one-on-one mentorship. And so through our various pillars within Young Leaders Connect of ideal conversation, where we actually bring in thought leaders who come in and we curate content that is really based on topics and aspects that affect women, all facets of women in leadership. Then we've got thought leadership conversations where we invite leaders. We've got entrepreneurs as well, because we recognize that not all the women who are in leadership are actually working in corporate. So with our entrepreneurship leaders, what we do is we empower those women-owned business through pitching competitions, as well as access to workshops and training that will empower them to really run their businesses successfully.
Okay, if you'd allow me to just join you there, what affects women in the South African context?
What affects women in the South African context is really inequality. You know, historically, we've really tried to aspire to say, how do we embrace equality? But equality is not adequate, because the playing field has not always been leveled for women. And that is why even our summit is themed Embrace Equity, because what we are saying is, how do we move beyond equality? Because you recognize that if somebody is this short, right, and you give everybody, and I'm tall, and you all give us something to stand on, it really doesn't level the playing field. But what you need is to actually give resources and assign resources to where there's more need. And so we're saying that because women have historically been disadvantaged, let us actually do more to advance the causes and the plight of women. And we recognize as well that because women don't have assets and resources, issues such as gender-based violence are exacerbated. And so when women are empowered and they actually have their own assets and resources, then women have choices. When you have choices about your life, you are able to even decide that, you know what, I cannot stay in these kind of situations that are not conducive for me to thrive. And that is really what we're trying to do in YLC. We're saying, let us equip and empower women to have choices, to lead, to use their voices, and to be fearless.
Sure. You mentioned the mentorship and not repeating the mistakes of the past. Does the mentorship cut across industries?
Of course. And so one of the really amazing things that we have going at YLC is around the fact that we are not focused on a specific sector or profession. You know, we've got chartered accountants, actuaries, doctors, engineers, and many other professionals. And what we've really embraced with that is that there's such a richness that comes with the diversity of thought that we have with our ladies within our cohort of mentees. I mean, when we're required to do a specific project, we've got people who come, they are experts in PR, they are experts in marketing, and all of us are actually able to learn from each other. One of the things that we say as our mantra is to say, sisters supporting sisters, showing up for our sisters, and that is really what we do at YLC.
Okay, tell us about the event on the 1st of September, what to look forward to.
For sure. I mean, we're so excited and thrilled to host our 3rd annual Leadership Summit. We've really curated content that is enriching and powerful. So as we've said, the theme this year is about embracing equity, which is actually consistent with the theme for this year for the International Women's Day. We're saying, let us actually embrace equity in every facet of women's life, where some of the topics that we will be unpacking is about how do we actually use education as a catalyst to empower women in leadership. And so some of our speakers that we will be having there is Dr. Judith Lamini from the Chancellor of BEDS. We've got also Ms. Shamla Chetty, who's the CEO of Juke. I mean, particularly for the education piece, I think they will definitely bring us really empowering insights in that regard. We are also saying as well, you know, we need to go beyond the seat at the table. It's no longer enough that you are putting me on the board. I actually need to have a voice. So we actually want to ensure that women's voices are heard, but women are also taking up space in those positions where decisions are made and leading boards. So we will be having a conversation with chairmen of boards who will tell us their perspective as women who are really leading these boards. But more than that, as I've spoken about entrepreneurship as one of our strategic initiatives that we're having, we're saying that how do we create a pipeline for female founders? How do we ensure that there are policies that are actually in place to ensure that venture capitals and entities and organizations that are founded and owned by women have access to these resources? So those are some of the things that we will be chatting about. But more than that, we want to say, as we reflect on 3 years of YLC, where is the proof? Does mentorship, sponsorship, and allyship work? And so we will be sharing with our members some of the true evidence of what we have been able to achieve so far in the last 3 years as YLC.
Okay. More pointedly, when we speak of equality and equity, where are the men in these conversations? Women don't do this to themselves.
No, for sure. So men definitely have to be in the room. They have to be there, because it doesn't help when we close the doors and we only have these conversations ourselves, because then we are venting and nothing really changes. So of course we do have men who will be panelists. I mean, when we talk about funding for female founders, the CEO of the NYDA will be one of the speakers that we are having there. And we definitely do have our male sponsors who support us, friends of YLC, that will be there to hear. We need to raise awareness, and of course our male counterparts have to hear so that they can go and help us in changing the narrative and driving the change.
Okay, all the best for the event on the 1st of September, and congratulations on
Thank
your 3rd
you.
year. Lerato Phelane is the Young Leaders Connect co-chairperson.